One of the things I'm curious about is if a shaman has a toolkit of basic stuff, what are some of the things that you would say are in that basic toolkit that most shaman have?
I would say, in my experience, most shaman are going to have a drum. So a drum is going to be a necessity in that, maybe 2 or 3 drums. And rattles are extremely important. And in my case, I have rattles. I have ceremonial rattles. I have rattles, for almost anything. For extraction healings, I have a certain rattle. I have just different ones. I have a rattle for calling in my spirit helpers and guides. So each one has a different feel to it and a different energetic tone to it. And I know when I use it. So I use the rattle's vibration to achieve a certain energetic harmony when I'm working with somebody. So rattles and drums are a necessity. You'll also see, things like incense is sometimes something you'll use when they're, just to help with the senses or, calm the person. You can use different incenses to do that. Often when I'm doing a healing, I will have all the elements that I can bring in from the outside in. So I often have a candle, so representing fire. I'll have soil from the earth outside, representing the earth. And then I'll have a bowl of water. So water, whether from the drinking water or water from a lake or something nearby. And so I bring those elements in because I want to call in the spirits of the land as well. And they will help me with my healing. I'll often bring a plant into the environment too, because plants are very good at healing. I also, not all shamans do this, but I bring my dog.
And she's here now.
Yeah, she's down here on the floor, and she's a very good at healing. In fact, she's done a lot of healing work with me, and she often, when a person needs healing, will want to sit between their legs. So if a client's laying down, she'll lay between their legs, and her head will heat up. And it's a really interesting thing. It's almost like Reiki energy coming from her head. Doesn't normally happen unless we're in a healing, and I'll notice it gets very, very hot, and it's the most amazing thing. But she senses that healing, and she does the healing work with me. And even though she's getting older, she still does that work with me, which is amazing. You
also told me that she knows when people are going to die.
She can, yes, for sure. She's and she has talked to me many times. When I was in shaman school, actually, the first time was when I was in mystery school, and I was away from her, and I was, it's mystery school. You go away for 10, 12 days, and it was a long time to be away from her. She's my little baby, and one of the teachers says, "Well, during your meditation, talk to her and tell her what's going on." And I said, "Well, that's a great idea." So at this school, it's a closed campus. There's no cell phones, no outside connection to the outside world.
Wise.
So while I was in there, I was just journaling everything that was happening, and then I was talking to my dog, and all of a sudden I started getting messages back. And I'm like, what? And it was like a little girl's voice, but I was like, this is Maggie, and I'm fine. And she was telling me stories, and I'm like, this is crazy. And I'm like, well, I'm going to write it down. So one day she says, this was when I was with my ex-husband. She says, Bill took me to the golf course today, and I got in some trouble. And I'm thinking, it's Tuesday. Usually we'd walk around Mondays when the golf course was closed. I'm like, why would she go on a Tuesday? It's really bizarre. So I just wrote it in my book. And then another day, she's like, I was really missing you. But Bill brought me to the office, and Dee, this girl who worked at my front desk, she was there. And she must have known she sensed that I was sad. She put me in her lap, and she held me, and I felt much better. So I wrote this in my book. Of course, when I got back, the first thing I said to Bill was, hey, did you take Maggie to the golf course on a Tuesday? And he goes, yeah, how did you know that? I said, Maggie told me. And so he was already privy to the idea that I did things, so he was okay with that. He was like, okay. And he says, well, I said, she said she got into trouble. And he goes, she did. She decided to run across the river onto the other side, and she was running back and forth, laughing at me, and I didn't want to go through the river because I had my shoes on. So I kept on calling her, and finally she came back across. I said, well, that's pretty funny. So then I went to work, and I said, Dee, was Maggie here on Friday? She told me she was here on that Friday. And she goes, yeah, how did you know that? And I said, well, she told me. And I said, she told me she was upset. And I go, you put her in her lap. She goes, okay, that's really weird. There was no one in the office when that happened. How would you know that? I said, Maggie told me. So dogs are very good at communicating. And so they can tell you things that you may not pick up on because they're picking up on subtle energy. In fact, when you pay attention to animals, they often will suffer the same disease as their owner. So you see cancer, and the dog has cancer. Diabetes, the dog has diabetes. And if that person doesn't have it, the dog may be having it first, and eventually the owner will pick up on it because it's energetically in their field.
Yeah, I saw a documentary recently. I don't remember the title of it, but they went into that and showed numerous cases of dogs that had acquired the same disease as its owner. And one of the suggestions was that they were doing it out of sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to take on the burden for the owner.
Yeah, what I feel is they're picking up on the energetic field, and they love you so much they pick up and they embrace your energetic field, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And they hold on to that energy and, like I said, absorb some of that from you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So just before we run out of time, why don't you share some of the most interesting or profound experiences that you've had in your own, either in your own shamanic practices
well, should we talk about the one that just happened? About the woodpecker?
Well, you can tell them about that. That's pretty interesting. Me and you have had some interesting ones together. I think I would be the witness to what was going on with you, because I've definitely noticed that there's things that happen around you. I said to someone the other day, the thing about being married to a shaman is if she's not in a good mood, you'll know it, because blackbirds and things will start falling out of the sky and the water will change color and all sorts of shit starts going on. It'll start
raining and the storm will happen.
Yeah.
Yes, and I do feel that way. And I sometimes used to think of my moods were connected to the environment, but now I think my mood creates the environment.
Yes, it does.
So that recent story that I'll share with you is that just recently it was around my birthday. In October, I was driving up to the Heaven House to see Paul. We were going to celebrate my birthday and do some painting together. And so as I was driving up the hill, if you've ever been to the Heaven House, it's this very tall, steep hill, and I'm driving up this road, and I see this red thing in the road, and I stop because I'm like, what's that? And I back up, and I'm like, and I notice it's a woodpecker. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I get out of my car, and of course, you know, I have my phone with me, so I'm taking a picture of it. There's a woodpecker sitting in the road. So I get out, and I pick it up. And it's obviously stunned. And so I take a picture, I snap it. So I have these, I post them on Facebook. I'm like, here is a woodpecker in my hand. And I'm like, well, something, energetically what felt to me is like maybe a crow or some bigger bird attacked it and kind of threw it off its ground and maybe fell on the ground and was a little stunned. So I picked it up because I was in a hurry. So I thought, well, let's come with me in my car. So I put it in the dashboard, and it was driving up the road, and it kind of moved around and it popped into my hair and was sitting on my head. I'm like, this is really bizarre, because one, you know, we think a woodpecker would not want anything to do with a human, yet alone sit in their hair while I'm driving. So I'm taking pictures with my phone going, there's a woodpecker in my hair. And it's just looking around while I'm driving the car. And eventually it finally jumped to the neighboring seat post, and it was sat there. And then when I came up to the hill, I remember you came out to greet me, and I said, look what's in my car.
Yeah.
And as I opened the door, the bird flew out. So it had got over its stunnedness. And I thought, there was a message here for me. And first I looked it up, and it was like something about new beginnings and new opportunities in your life. And I'm like, well, this is great. This sounds very exciting. You know, so I went on my way. And then the next day, I'm walking my dog and in my neighborhood and in our Vista location, and I see this giant tarantula. Mm-hmm. Well, in the 7 years I've been there, I've never seen a tarantula in this area. Now at the Heaven House, we have them all the time.
Yeah.
But this is a very uncommon occurrence of a tarantula in this area. So I take a picture of that because I had my phone. I'm like, wow, it's very interesting. And so, you know, I'm like, well, what does that mean? Well, you know, tarantulas are about spinning their web and creating new things, new dimensions. And I'm like, okay. So, and then the next day, I run into a snake. And I'm like, this is weird. And it was stunned too. So I picked it up. I didn't pick up the tarantula. Now I could have, because it was stunned. It didn't move. So all these animals were kind of stunned, waiting for me to pick them up or touch them in some way. And I know tarantulas don't bite, but I just thought it was getting late, and you know, I just didn't have any need to touch it. But I literally sat there and talking to it and almost petting it, and it just sat there. And this snake was stunned. So I did pick up the snake.
I saw the picture. I was really surprised you picked up a snake that big.
Yeah, and so I was like, hello, how are you? And it was just very quiet, so I gave it some love and some energy, and I took it out of the road and put it on the side. And even Mana wanted to pet the snake, and I was like, okay, let's go before it wakes up too much. And so, you know, I think, well, these are some very strong animals in my field. And then the next day, I was at the storage unit, and I was clearing out a storage unit, and I see this little mouse. And again, the mouse is stunned, and it's in the way of the road. So I had these workers helping me move the storage, and we had to go around the mouse. It was literally, I could have picked it up, and I'm like, this is a wild mouse. I don't want to get bit by something wild. You never know what a mouse has. So I just talked to it, and it kind of moved out of its way, but it was with us for a good 30, 40 minutes, completely kind of stunned. And so all these animals were the same. They were in my field where I could literally touch them or pick them up. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting to have so many different animals come to me like that. So I posted it on Facebook, and one of my friends, who must be a shaman, She says, Angie, are you pregnant? And I went, that's so funny. No, I have Mana, and I'm not having another child, but I go, you'd be the first one to know. And I thought this was so funny. I go, why would you say that? She goes, well, a bird makes a nest, a spider makes a web, a mouse will do, has a nest too, it's nurturing, and snake is Kundalini energy. So all these indicate...
And rebirth.
And so she says, all of this makes sense that you'd be having a child. And I was like, oh, that's just crazy, So lo and behold, if you guys don't know, surprise, I am pregnant with our second child. And so it was almost like Great Spirit was talking to us and saying, there's something big coming up in your field. And it was before we even knew it. So,
the other thing that I found really fascinating is I had never seen a woodpecker that looked like that. And when you researched, it's not even from this area.
No.
We're not even supposed to have those woodpeckers here.
Right.
Where was it from? It was from another country.
Yeah, I don't know. It was like South America or something, but it was not something commonly found here at all. It was something.
And it had a great big cock on it, like like the I don't know what, I can't remember the name of it, but the headdress on a red
cockatiel or something.
The top of the rooster's head, the prongs sticking out. I forgot the name of that part of the rooster, but it looked like it had a rooster's headdress on a little tiny, small black woodpecker, and I have never seen a black woodpecker around here anywhere. And so that was just sort of mysterious in itself. And, there's lots of stories. I just feel compelled to share. One time I was at your house. This is before we lived together. So this is, a long number of years ago. And we had just finished working out, I think. We were gone for a walk. I think we were doing sprinting. We were doing sprint repeats.
We went for a walk in the evening. I think we just took Maggie for a walk. I think it was in the evening. It was a nice night. And we decided...
Okay, yeah. Was that... I'm talking about the hummingbird.
Oh, no. I was talking about the skunk.
Oh, no. I wasn't talking about the skunk. We had just come back from sprinting.
Okay. Oh, right. Okay.
And we were walking into your front yard, which had a very big pine tree. I'm not sure what family it is, but, like a tree 80 feet tall and 2 feet at the butt. And just as we were walking past the tree... There was was it you that almost stepped on it or me?
I think it was me, because I think Maggie was getting close to it.
Yeah, but there was a tiny baby hummingbird. I mean, like the size of,
yes,
maybe
it was
like
tiny, like my thumb.
Yeah, just a part of your thumb. I mean, maybe an ounce or something like that. And you could see that it hadn't been around very long.
It barely had its feathers.
Yeah, barely had any feathers.
Standard fluff.
It looked like it pulled right out of an egg. Mm-hmm. And we looked up and there was a nest up above us and something had happened, and this thing you did most of the work, but we raised it together. We taught it how to fly. Mm-hmm. We named it Sunil. Mm-hmm. And it took, I think, 23 days, if I remember right, before it could go off on its own.
Yeah, I remember. And I was getting it strong enough, and we were practicing flying, and it wasn't strong enough, and we'd bring it here to the Heaven House and fly on all the trees and learn aeronautics, and it'd land on your finger. And then one day I thought, okay, it's strong enough, so I put it outside. And at night, usually I left it outside all day, and then it would come back at night. And then this one particular day, I was bringing it in. It would sit on top of its birdcage, not inside. And I brought it in, and it said the sound to me, and it sounded like, no, I don't want to go inside the house tonight. Mm. And it flew out. I'm like, well, she's old enough. She's strong enough, I guess. So I said, all right. So I put her cage back outside and let her go. And the next morning I came out there, and she flew back to me, and she was covered in water, wet. And she's shaking like this. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And she's looking at me, and I'm like, are you okay? And I tried to bring her back in, and she was like, no. It just sounded like it was like a no. Like she was, I don't know if it was energetic, but I knew she was saying, no, I don't want you to help me, but I want you to see I'm okay, but I'm cold. Yeah. I'm like, okay. So I was very worried. Well, then the next night, it stayed away, and then the next night flew back, and the next morning I saw it, and it was warm. It obviously must have slept somewhere where there was a sprinkler or something, and it got cold. And so the next night, it was found a place that was warm, and its feathers were dry, and it showed up in the morning like, look at me, I'm okay. And I realized, okay, it's learning how to be in the wild. But I remember that first night as a mother, it was kind of like, no, come back, I'll save you. But the little bird was like, no, I'm okay, Mom, but I'm cold.
Yeah.